Good morning, everyone. It's Rabbi Dr. Jack Cohen, dating coach and shotgun. I'd like to share an amazing story with you. It was a hot, steamy day in Midtown Manhattan. A successful Jewish businessman had just gotten off the subway and was getting ready to go to his office when he saw a horrible sight. A beggar who was going through the garbage looking for something to eat, flies all around him. And suddenly, he didn't know what made him say this. He said to the beggar, "Hey, good morning, how are you?" The man looks at him and says, "What can I do for you?" He goes, "I feel so bad for you. Can I invite you to lunch? You know, there's a pizza store nearby. I'd be delighted to take you there and get you something to eat." So the beggar looks at him and he goes, "You think you're a big shot because you're wearing a suit?" Somehow he convinced them. And the Jewish businessman took him to lunch. And there he was sitting with this man who was smelly and stinky. He bought him some pizza. And suddenly he told him his story. He told him, "I had once upon a time been a very successful businessman. I was in the oil business. And then business took a turn for the worse. I came home. I was angry. I got into a terrible fight with my wife. I stormed out of the door 6 months later. I haven't seen them since." The man said, "Wow, I feel so bad for you." He convinced him to come to his office where he alerted him, "Go take a shower." There was a shower in his office. The man took a shower and then he got him a fresh tracksuit and he started to talk. He told him about his life, how he had a beautiful family in Flatbush, no less, in Brooklyn, with a wonderful wife and beautiful children, and he hadn't seen them. And so the businessman implored him, "Let me call your wife. Please let me call your wife." He wouldn't let him. He was embarrassed. And finally, after several hours of struggling with this man, he convinced him to call his wife. So the businessman called the beggar's wife. And then he said to him, "I have your husband here." She started screaming in shock. "What? For 6 months we've been looking for him. Police search teams have been looking everywhere." And she started to cry. And then they made up that they were going to have a reunion. And the businessman drove him to his house. And suddenly the wife came out and hugged him, and his kids came out and hugged him. And then the beggar looks at him and he says to him, "How can I ever thank you for what you did for me?" So the businessman looks at him and he says, "Do one thing for me. Just keep Shabbos. And in that merit, everything will go well." And so they kept in touch. He gave him money to get back on his feet and start a new business. And the man prospered. And then years went by. A few years went by, and then suddenly there was a knock on this Jewish businessman's door. In came a very successful looking businessman, and he looks at him. "Do you remember me? Do you recognize me?" And he tells him, "No, not really." And then suddenly he came back to him. It was the beggar on the street that he had helped. They hugged each other. And the man says to him, "I have a gift for you." He pulls out a beautiful box. He unwraps it. It was a gorgeous silver goblet that he could use for Shabbat Kiddush. And what do we see from here, ladies and gentlemen? Anger can destroy lives. We have to be very careful. The Gemara tells the story of the Pelegish Givah, the concubine from Givah, where the man drove her out of the house because he was angry with her. And then he ended up sending her out, and they gang raped her and they cut her up into pieces, all up because of anger. We have to be so careful. This is a terrible, terrible quality that can destroy lives. If we can be careful, we don't fall prey to this thing, we'll surely have wonderful shalom bayit. Have a wonderful day.